You start.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Social Club at the End of This World. I'm Jamin Shively here with my queen, Melissa.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, and we've got some wonderful guests here with us today, including my Uncle Frank, who just joined. Hey, Uncle Frank, we're broadcasting and recording, just so you know, and you can mute your microphone, but we'd love to see you. So we're starting now with personal updates. So, Melissa, do you want to kick us off?
Thanks, Jamin.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Great to see all of you and to be here. It's been a very busy time. Jamin and I joined the Seattle Extinction Rebellion group at their event at the Fremont Solstice Parade. And we brought the salmon that Molly Brown and I made to join the float. They built a giant iceberg with a starving polar bear. And we had an incredible experience with the crowd, interacting with the crowd and really engaging them to think about and to talk about taking care of Mother Earth and all living beings and not being so homocentric. That was really powerful. A lot of the audience, when we spoke to them, actually touched their hearts, which was really powerful to witness. And a lot of the mothers would say to their children, listen to what they're saying. As we said to them, you know, people, we have to start taking care of the orca now and the tree people and the salmon people. So they could really hear that. And that was a big change that we noticed. So that was very successful. And we are working on a project together at the moment, which is involving art in bringing community together to find some solutions to a crisis that this community are in around abrupt climate change and sea level rise. So that's really powerful. And I won't say more about that right now, but you'll hear more about it later. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, sweetheart. All right, we're broadcasting and recording. Welcome, Dan. And we're just doing personal updates right now. Dan, if you want to do a personal update, just wave right in front of your face so I know that you do. And great. And then Adam's next on personal updates, followed by Miles, followed by Dan. All right, take it away, Adam.
Okay, so I know that it's taken me a long time to get this website up, but it's worth it because I'm really getting dialed in on, on exactly what I'm saying, and so I've been working on it, and my assistant has taken off for a month, so I got a little bit of delay, but it gives me time to put things together, and so I expect to have this website online by the end of the first week of July or August, and maybe even sooner. But anyway, that's my update. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Adam. All right. Next up is Miles. Take it away, Miles.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here. And I'd like to, again, start out by acknowledging I'm on Treaty 7, the traditional territory of the Niitsitapi, also known as the Blackfoot Confederacy. And my personal update is to share that I participated in the webinar that Dr. Rao hosted this past weekend related to the further substantiation of the facts contained in the documentary Cowspiracy, for which he's executive producer. And at the same time,
is it just me, or are people having trouble hearing Miles? Just unmute and let us know if you can hear Jamin okay, or if you can hear Miles okay, or if you can hear both.
Sorry.
I can hear both of you.
Okay, great. Okay, carry on, Miles. Sorry.
Okay, I couldn't find my earbuds with my little microphone, so hopefully the microphone on my tablet's working well. So just quickly, again, I participated in the Revisit to the Cowspiracy webinar. And coincidentally, I've also picked up, revisited the copy of the book by His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, titled Harmony, A New Way of Looking at Our World. And there's tremendous intersection with the Ahimsa movement, the movement of nonviolence that Dr. Rao promotes. I think we would actually take Prince Charles to a higher level of consciousness related to what he already knows. This book was written in 2010. I'm going back to it and I'm like, wow, I read it once before, but I wasn't getting the foresight that Prince Charles has on these situations. And he's talking about stuff in 2010 that, you know, we've been talking about in the social club. So and finally, just another update. I recently subscribed to the Alberta Native News. This is a publication for Indigenous people here in Alberta. And as Prince Charles says in his book, the Indigenous wisdom is definitely what we need to go back to and draw on to get to this next age of Aquarius, we might say. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Miles. We're broadcasting and recording. Welcome, Fred. We're doing personal updates right now. If you want to do a personal update, please wave if you haven't already. Next up is Dan and Silas. Yep, gotcha. Silas will give a personal update. So let's go Dan, followed by Silas. Take it away, Dan.
Yeah, hi. So just a couple of thoughts, reflections on what I've been noting over the past week. I did watch the debates, the Democratic Party debates, and it was very, very disappointing on so many different levels. I've mentioned before, I've been supporting Tulsi Gabbard for certain reasons, and I am definitely of the opinion that if people really want to take down Donald Trump, you really ought to give her a careful check out. And so that's again, the debates extremely disappointing, and in that regard, I noticed that Beto O'Rourke acknowledged that at least one of the key variables in terms of the immigration is climate change. He came out, not at the debate, but later he came out and he said, that people aren't able to grow food. That is a climate change issue. Of course, it just sort of, in terms of the national consciousness, it just seemed like that went in one ear and out the next, the other. And so, there just continues to be an inability to, on the part of the general population, to understand things in a coherent kind of a fashion, to sort of weave things together. And it's just very kind of depressing. The other thing that I noted, one of our kind of participants, not an active participant in the social club, but an observant participant, he sent out a video of an 11-year-old Canadian girl talking about being vegan at this point in time, really essential. And I thought it was pretty compelling because, here's this girl, the children, basically saying, I never thought I would have to be in this position. I would have thought the adults could have, figured things out and acted, in an appropriate way. So I thought all of that was fairly interesting, and just the the final thing I'll say in terms of the political situation and climate change is connected with it. It seems like there's a total misunderstanding of the fact that right now the foreign policy of the United States has been one of, liberal hegemony, and it hasn't worked out. It's just simply come to really the end of it, and things are being retrenched. And people, I think, need to kind of recognize that it's going to go, whatever time we have left, it's going to be a much more tribal kind of situation. And anyway, I just wanted to throw some thoughts out there. I'm done. Thank you.
Good stuff, Dan. Good stuff. All righty. Welcome those who've joined recently. We're just doing personal updates right now. Next personal update is Dr. Silas Rao. Take it away, Silas.
Okay. Well, I realized that there are a lot of things have happened since the last time I came on the social club, so I need to sort of update you. Yeah, Miles mentioned the webinar that we had last weekend. Basically going through the questions that we've been getting about Cowspiracy and showing why we stand by the facts that we have in the movie. And in fact, the facts are probably very conservative and the situation is worse than what we are saying in the movie. Also, the major thing that I've been working on is how to respond to Facebook and its announcement of a global cryptocurrency, the Libra Association. I don't know if you're all familiar with that. Facebook announced that they're working on a currency and that will be available on Facebook in 2020. And it will be a global currency that anyone can use, anyone who's on Facebook can use. Or it will be transferable with the basket of currency, with the currencies of national currencies of today. But they're hoping that eventually no one will use the national currencies, but just use Facebook's currency, which is Libra. They call it Libra. And so to initiate Libra, they have a group of 100 corporations and NGOs who have put at least $10 million each. So they have a pot of about over $1 billion, and it's going to be put in a bank in Switzerland for obvious reasons. And the Libra Association will be managing it from Switzerland, and of course, Facebook will be the 101st corporation that's part of that. So I realized that if corporations are getting together and creating their own currency, then it's going to happen because the governments are powerless to stop these corporations from doing it. And so if it's going to happen, then what is our response to that? So because this is basically about accelerating the current system of normalized violence and thereby bringing everything to a head much faster than we would otherwise. So I'm working on a response. I'm working on an alternate currency. Of course, I've been talking about this for a while, but it's about creating something that would help people change the way they act today, because that's really all currency does, determine what we are putting our effort into, our time and effort into. So I'm working on the next webinar will be on July 13th. So the webinar that I did on Saturday is available on our website. You just go to climatehealers.org/webinar. You will see all the webinars that I've done so far. So there's 6 of them. And so the 7th one that I'm doing on July 13th will be about the economy. So I'm going to be analyzing what's happening with the Facebook currency and what would be the implications of this, and how do we as people respond to this. And also, we announced the Vegan World 2026 conference. It'll be held in Mesa, Arizona, October 25th through 27th. And it's a conference. We had the same conference last year, where we came up with a bunch of questions, and this year we're going to be looking at these questions and figuring out what kind of apps we need to address these questions, that we can then create the equivalent of an Android around this. And then what kind of response do we do for Facebook since cryptocurrency? What kind of currency we need for the future? So anyway, those are the two main topics that they're going to be addressing. And it is, and again, we have like 5 categories that we work on. So there'll be, people are going to have breakout sessions into multiple groups, and we're going to be working together in those groups. So that's why it's very difficult to have any online interaction in the conference, because things are happening in parallel. So if you have to do online interaction, you will have to have multiple live streams happening, which is not feasible at the moment. So I think for some things we do need to come together as people and work together. And so that's what this conference is about. Anyway, that's my update. Thank you.
Beautiful. Great stuff. Thank you, Silas. All right. We're wrapping up personal updates. If you want to give a personal update, just wave your hand. All right. Jacqueline. Take it away, Jacqueline.
So Saturday, we held a screening of the documentary, The Invisible Vegan. And that is an African-American woman creating the documentary that she wished she would have seen as a young woman to prevent a lot of her suffering and ailments. She addressed a lot of the myths that are in the African-American community with regard to veganism. We had a panel to address the community because it was targeted for pre-vegans in the underrepresented, underserved, marginalized communities in the Phoenix metropolitan area. So Sailesh spoke. We had my plant-based physician there to answer questions. We had one of the community members who founded the nonprofit Doctors Are Drug Dealers. She's a social worker, she's a mom. So she was also on the panel. And then we had community members come and speak about their journey into veganism and how it's affected their lives and how they've become climate healers themselves. It was an amazing event. We had food vendors donate food so that the community can taste vegan food. So we had desserts and we had entrees. It was just warm. It really felt, we really wanted the community to feel like they were coming to our home to discuss some really kind of interesting, kind of difficult topics. And that's the way everyone felt. They really embraced our plant-based physician, asked a lot of questions. We've been contacted over the last few days from the community, reaching out for resources. So it was really, really nice. And we really touched a lot on the climate impact, what's happening with the climate on our Black and Brown communities, and that we have to bring that awareness and that connectivity back.
Beautiful.
I'm done. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Jacqueline. All right. Anyone else want to give a personal update? Just wave your hand. Okay. And I know we got people waiting to comment, so I'll give my personal update, and then we can jump right into the general session. And just a reminder for those who just joined or maybe didn't see the email, Melissa and I will have to go in a little over half an hour, but y'all can continue. We'll just keep it rolling. Anyone who wants to stay. My personal update. Really been focusing a lot on the project that Melissa mentioned that's specific to one community, and it's really, and the impacts of climate change and what we're gonna need to do to help this community with abrupt climate change and what it's suffering. And it reminds me of a quote that I don't know exactly how it goes. I think it's by some Russian writer like Tolstoy or something like that from 150 years ago. But the quote basically goes like this: a million deaths is but a statistic, but one person's story is like a dramatic tragedy or something like that, you know. And so now if we apply that to a specific community, you know, giant, you know, climate change statistics are just that, statistics, but one community's story, wow, you know, that can really get your attention. This is a real tragedy. We got to do something about this. So it's really gotten me thinking about that. And, you know, the potential of really putting the focus on one community. I mean, there's so many communities that are suffering right now. India with massive heat waves and droughts and people dying of thirst and exposure and forest fires, and all throughout Europe, heat wave in Europe. And, you know, I'm sure we'll get we've already started our wave of forest fires here in North America. So, oh yeah, major floods in Mumbai today. Thank you, Silas. So there's all these places around the world that are suffering their own flavor of abrupt climate change. So how do we put the focus on one or more specific communities and what they're doing, so that we can, you know, start creating dialogue both within that community and between that community and the rest of the world as a platform for collective intelligence to emerge and begin to generate radical solutions, radical transformational solutions, including how do we really get veganism to grow at a massively higher rate than what it's been growing up until now. So thinking a lot about that, traveling with Melissa for the next week or so, and yeah, just rethinking how do we get this party started in a big way. So more, yes, sweetheart. Did you have something to add? Oh, okay. All right. So unless there's any other personal updates, let's get started. Yeah.
I would love to jump in here for a minute.
Jason, go for it. Go for it. Welcome, Jason.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jason. I currently live in Eugene, Oregon. I just moved here from Los Angeles, California, the Los Angeles area. I like to say sometimes that I really feel like I managed to escape Los Angeles. Just because if you think about enough of what's coming, you maybe wouldn't want to be in a really, really populous area. And so I'm happy to be here. Last week, Victoria had asked me a question, you know, did I find that the people, you know, just by moving, did I find that people were more receptive to listen about climate change, or that there was more people who knew about it? I wouldn't think that's the case. You know, there's less people here, and so I don't think people are more aware of it than anywhere else. I think people are still just kind of, just like anywhere else in civilization, just kind of going through their daily movements of, like, you know, going to work and making money in order to sustain life. And they don't really think about whether the climate is imploding or not. And, you know, so what I've been trying to focus on is I garden a lot. And I know that maybe gardening and growing your own food may not work when the shit really hits the fan, but I think having a basic knowledge in a real skill, growing yourself food is an important thing, and being a little more sustainable so that you can make it through ebbs and flows in you know, food delivery or whatnot. So I guess I just encourage everybody to do more of that for yourself. You know, it's interesting. I do want to mention, you're talking about veganism, and I would agree that maybe veganism is a good way to approach this crisis, but I feel like the real issue with animal agriculture is these massive industrial-sized facilities. And now being in a more rural area, when a lot of environmentalists talk about, you know, going vegan and completely getting rid of meat, they actually kind of alienate people who live in rural areas. So just something to think about, because if you tell everybody the only way to save Mother Earth is to go vegan. There's going to be a lot of people who will immediately just be like, all right, this is a nutter. I'm not going to listen to you. So just something to think about, because it's not exactly true. There are, to some degree, there are a lot of useful things that animals do in an ecosystem. And, you know, they are just part of a farm. And you use their manure and they process things. So I just don't know if saying that veganism is the one thing that's going to save the planet is really the truth. But I am here for the collective intelligence part of how do we all work together to solve, you know, these tremendously huge issues that we're facing on planet Earth. Anyways, I'm Jason. It's good to see everybody here. Thanks for giving me a moment.
Absolutely. Thanks for the update, Jason. Appreciate it. All right. I'm going to just mention what the kind of the theme of for the agenda that Adam proposed, which I really like. And then Melissa has a comment, followed by Miles, followed by Dan. So the theme that Adam proposed, which I really like, is if I were in charge, I would do blank, right? Or I would mandate blank. And so love to hear everyone's thoughts on that as kind of a theme. With that, I'll turn it over to Queen Melissa, again, followed by Miles, followed by Dan. Take it away, Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for your words. I am in that same place where I'm finding that what used to have meaning for me really doesn't have meaning any longer. And I think there's something interesting about the human psyche where our actions, often we've continued doing things because we attributed meaning to those actions. And so what actions do we take now when they no longer have meaning and we're lost, we don't find meaning? So I'm really thinking about that. And there is something about just being with nature, whether you're planting, whether you're working with animals. And I have to just interject here that we have this increasing menagerie at our place on Whidbey. Like we have a raccoon now who we're feeding, a cat adopted us. We've got crows who've now brought their babies, a deer community. So it's increasing. And there's something about, regardless of the outcome, just be tending nature and doing whatever we can, whether it's beach cleanup, putting water out, planting, that I personally find very healing. And I think many people will find that very healing. And I did want to read something from Joanna Macy's book, Coming Back to Life. So I will share this with all of you. Very much well worth a read. She wrote this in 2000. And this is the chapter on despair work. So this is a Sufi saying, overcome any bitterness that may have come because you were not up to the magnitude of the pain that was entrusted to you. Like the mother of the world who carries the pain of the world in her heart, each one of us is a part of her heart and therefore endowed with a certain measure of cosmic pain. You are sharing in the totality of that pain. You are called upon to meet it in joy instead of self-pity. The Zen poet Thich Nhat Hanh was asked, "What do we need to do to save the world?" His questionnaires expected him to identify the best strategies to pursue in social and environmental action. But instead he answered this: what we most need to do is to hear within us the sounds of the earth crying.
Beautiful. Thank you, sweetheart. All righty. Up next is Miles, followed by Dan. Take it away, Miles.
Okay, first I'll do a sound check. Everybody okay with my audio? Excellent. So what would I do if I could? And given what Dr. Rao has brought to the table, that Facebook is moving into currency creation, there seems to be a synchronicity here, because just yesterday I finished transcribing a conversation that I had the good fortune to be part of between Skip Conover, Donald Skip Conover, who's a master's of business administration, has a degree in law, is a retired lieutenant colonel of the U.S. Marines, is in his 70s, studies Carl Jung. So that's his curriculum vitae. The other person involved in this conversation was the Honorable Paul Hellyer, former Minister of Defense in Canada, once a Deputy Prime Minister for Canada, a World War II veteran. Skip is a Vietnam veteran. Mr. Hellyer has also got a degree in economics and was Minister of Transportation here in Canada. And he's very much interested in money and how it's created, how it has been created. So I'm going to take my few minutes without any further delay. And this is pretty much maybe all I'll say today, but just a quote. So because this is of importance to Dr. Rao regarding money, this is Mr. Hellyer's book, one of several, called The Money Mafia, A World in Crisis. And in the conversation, Skip asks him to talk about this money mafia. And he says, Mr. Hellyer says, well, I find it fascinating, as you know, that the whole financial system is nothing but a deck of cards anyway. It is a giant. Are you okay? I'm getting some feedback. So
yeah, that's Fred who just joined. Fred, I'm going to mute you because we're getting echo from you. Okay, I just muted Fred. You're good to go, Miles.
Okay, thanks. So there's I gave you the curriculum vitae of these two gentlemen, and so Mr. Hellyer goes on to say, and this is what I would do. I would say, okay, we've got to get an alternate form of currency going, because what Facebook is proposing, no doubt, is a continuation of a currency based on the values of the industrial growth society, as opposed to the values of a sustainable and harmonious society. So Mr. Hellyer says, the current system is a giant Ponzi scheme which some people devised and then sold to politicians, probably with a little handshaking in the process and a few wink winks. So you have trillions of dollars that are not really trillions of dollars. They're just bank deposits or mortgage holdings, and it's all a false system. And they crash it. The people that control it can crash it when they want. They've done that, I don't know, 30 times in the last 115 years or something like that, recessions or depressions. The unfairness is that the system we have gives the creators of money control. They have more power than anybody else in the world. This is one of the points we have to address, the power points that we have to address, and I address it in many of my books. Skip replies, well, so one of the reasons I was interested in talking to you is because of the unfairness I see in the crash of 2008, and that the fact that the money, the financial community, got away with blaming the crash on single mothers of two in Memphis rather than themselves. So I'm personally very troubled by that. Paul Hellyer responds, see, I go back one generation earlier to the crash of 1929-1930, which was deliberately induced by the banks. Then your Senate, he's talking about your U.S. Senate committee, when they finally looked at it, they tore the banks to pieces for their complicity. But nothing happens, and that's the problem. Nothing happens in the right direction because the Congress, just before Christmas one year, a century ago, gave away the people's right to create their own currency. And he goes on to say, we have given the rich families a monopoly to create money, but it's all created as debt. It's manufactured out of thin air. There's nothing behind it, not even fiat money. It used to be that when the Bank of England was first incorporated, the king needed money to finance a war. The rich people put £1,200,000 for capital at 8%, which is a pretty high interest rate for a government guaranteed loan. And then to show his pleasure with them, the king said, you can print another £1,200,000 and lend it to your friends. So in fact, the bank was lending to the government and to others and collecting interest from both at the same time. In the early years of the 20th century, the US federally regulated bank had to have a gold reserve of 25%. They could lend the same money 4 times. When I was young in Canada, our banks had to have cash reserves of 8%. That meant they could lend the same amount of money 12.5 times. Then along comes Milton Friedman and his particular approach to things, and the banks wind up being able to lend the same money 20 times, 20 times, and in many cases more. Anybody that can manufacture money out of thin air and then lend it to 20 different governments, corporations, or people and collect interest from each at the same time is going to become immensely rich. That is what happened. I think it's 88 families own half the wealth of the whole world. Then it went down a couple of years ago. It finally wound up in 2016 that 62 families, which you could put on a suburban street, own half of the wealth of the world. So anyway, very important to reflect on these things. And I'll pause and let others speak now. Thank you.
Wow, really good stuff, Miles. That sounds like an amazing interview that you had. Please send us the link or the transcript. Next up is Dan. Take it away, Dan.
Okay. So, well, just a little follow up again, on the money issue and the cryptocurrency, the Libra. So, like I mentioned last week, there is something that's commonly referred to as the plunge protection team. And, so in essence, the Federal Reserve can intervene in the financial markets. And so if you just think about the stock market, so the stock market, if the stock market were to crash, that would destroy the assets of pension funds, 401ks. It would pretty much take the spirit, whatever there is, the fighting spirit left. It would be a devastating thing. So, they come in to the futures markets, the stock market, and they go ahead and they say to the banks, there are special banks like Goldman Sachs and a number of them. They say, we're going to come in and we're going to buy S&P futures, I don't know, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's time for you to understand that. So if any of the big financial interests are short the market, they know it's time to cover their shorts, take their profits, because the market is going to go up. They're not going to let it crash. And they do the reverse with the gold market. So if you and what am I basing that on? I'm basing it on the claims of Michael Hudson, who's a very well-known radical economist. He's highly respected around the world. And I'm also basing that on Paul Craig Roberts, who used to be, I think, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, a very well-respected economist under Reagan. And so, if you think about something like that, and how, so what does that mean? What are we doing when we talk, you talk about the stock market going up or the gold going up and down and so on. And I would say, with the, so without people understanding that and what the implications of something like that are, it's very, very hard for our population to, what kind of democracy do we have if nobody understands anything? You vote for this person or that person, you like their looks, you like their little comments and so on. So we're in a dilemma, but let me move to something that's really climate change notable. So I think it was NBC put something out. I saw it somewhere on the internet. I don't remember exactly where they were talking about how some climatologists and are saying that the jet stream has been altered. The jet stream has been altered, and we know, it's been altered because the Arctic is heating up, 7, 8, 9, 10 times faster than anywhere else. And then as the differential between the Arctic and, say, the equator, or whatever points you want to use, becomes smaller, the jet stream slows down, starts to waver, gets stuck. That allows more heating to be pushed up into the Arctic, and then the jet stream gets further affected. So it's a positive feedback loop. And when and again, without people understanding that kind of thing, just being totally ignorant, what can you do? And again, the idea of abrupt climate change, exponential climate change, I think just commonsensically rests on the fact that you've got, 60, 70, however many positive feedback loops going on that keeps accelerating things. And I don't, and to me, it's really not that hard. Okay, got it. I don't think it's that hard to understand. I don't think it's that hard to understand plunge protection team. I don't think it's that hard to understand why cryptocurrencies have sort of worked their way into the financial universe, because it's pretty clear that the dollar, the United States' ability to use the dollar to apply financial sanctions on all sorts of places and to be able to, make the dollar remain relatively strong, and they can just keep creating it, creating more money, putting it on the books of these banks. This stuff isn't that hard to understand. It's not, you don't have to be a PhD economist. You don't have to be a PhD geophysicist or something. So I think that's something that we need to ask ourselves as, energies get scattered all over the place. Why can't we, focus on getting a narrative together about, we just can't continue to be so ignorant. Okay, thank you.
No, good stuff. And since you mentioned currency again, I'm sure Silas will comment on this, but I just want to make a call out for July 13th, Silas's webinar on the economy, analyzing Facebook currency and the implications. Go to climatehealers.org/webinar, which Silas posted in the comments. I also want to just remind folks of the proposed theme for today is, if you were in charge, if I were in charge, I would do this, or I would mandate this. All right, next up is Adam, followed by Silas, followed by Jamin. Take it away, Adam.
Hey, okay, thanks. Yeah, if I was in charge, I would look at our situation with being in the sixth mass extinction and take it very seriously. And I would declare a national emergency, and I would make a place for everybody to be able to communicate and talk together on the internet, and get everybody's ideas and everybody's and I'd put them all, have a place for them to come together. So if I was in charge, I'd do all that. And the problem is that people think that the problems are just too big to do anything. What are you going to do about all the rednecks with guns? But we have to we cannot. I don't think we can get the whole mass of people. So we just have to deal with, do what we can do, I think, and that would be to take the people like us, who I call in the know, and and make a place for us to come and start building a vision of how we can get out of this mess. And there's a lot of different ideas and different ways, and we just need to put that plan together and give humanity a place to come to start doing this. And so that's what I would do. And also I wanted to say that if people want to stay after Jamin and Melissa leave, I did prepare some graphics to explain more about how money, the end of money would work. And but I don't have to present that this time if nobody wants to. So hey, thanks.
All right, good stuff, Adam. Next up is Silas, followed by Jamin. Take it away, Silas.
Okay, so if I were in charge, is that the proposition? If I were in charge, I would, knowing Buckminster Fuller, who said, if you want to change the way people think, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them a tool, the use of which will change the way they think. And today, we think the way we think and we act the way we act because of the architecture of the money system that we have created. It pretty much drives all the pathologies that we see here today. So if I were in charge, I would mandate that everyone switch to this new Aquarius currency that we are working on, in which equality is built in from the outset, where people are rewarded just for acts of compassion, where you have a minimum basic income for everyone, and you're simultaneously measuring human impact on the planet and making sure that it doesn't exceed a certain limit, which we all can agree on. So basically, it has all of the systems requirements of a currency that would drive us towards sustainability. And I would mandate that that be the new currency, and I would banish Facebook from issuing currencies. But I'm not in charge, so we'll see what happens. Thank you.
I love it, Silas. Thank you. Jamin is up next. There's no one in the queue after Jamin, so feel free to put yourself in the queue. And if you don't know how to do that technically, just wave in front of the screen, and I'll put you in the queue. And if I don't see you waving, somebody let me know. And anyway, so if I were in charge, I would basically do what Adam and Silas are suggesting. And Adam, to put in concise terms what Adam was saying, essentially, let's create a platform and a culture of collective intelligence and declare not just a national, but a planetary emergency, so that those who are dialed in and get it can come and join and be part of the collective intelligence. Because I believe that we have the potential to come up with brilliant, amazing solutions if we put our minds together in the right way, supported by the right systems, including software. And then to build on what Silas said about the Aquarius currency, I love the concept. I would also marry that with the CCC concept, the CCC standard, certified compassionate companies, to give people a choice so that they can, yeah, they could buy same old, or they can buy compassionate, where 100% of the profits go to eradicating hunger. And so between community cafes, the CCC currency, not the CCC currency, but the CCC standard, veganism, and the Aquarius currency, I think we've got the potential here to put together a kind of the machinery to not only help us break out of the prison that we're currently in. And I love the way you said that, Silas, that today the way we think and act is based on the architecture of the current money system. I think that's brilliant. And that is the Buckminster Fullerian tool that he didn't come up with, obviously, but which is driving all of our behavior, including my own, of course. So I really think we've got some incredible ingredients now. So I was talking with Melissa yesterday on the plane about, what it would look like to break out of prison. And we started exploring, one way is to kind of live off the grid, kind of try to grow your own food, etc. But that's a very small percentage of people who end up doing that. And then there's this pull back into the prison of the current money system for reasons of, wealth and accumulation and security and all these myths that get foisted on us. And so really the real answer is to actually dismantle the prison. That's the only way forward that I can see. And I think one of the cool things, I just want to make a little plug about CCC. Once we put CCC out there, and there are CCC options in the marketplace, start with one, maybe Sato Hemp clothing that donates all of its profits to ending hunger. And we start supporting these community cafes, vegan community cafes, to end hunger and build community. That starts a virtuous cycle going, which I call the Hungerless Games. I've showed a slide of that previously. And I believe that with that, if people have an option to buy CCC, they'll go for it because they know that that's the thing that's both ending hunger and saving Mother Earth, saving the environment. And it's the 99% who control the lion's share of consumer purchases. So we, the people, have the power to turn the direction of the economy. And one standard built on one letter, C, used 3 times, CCC, can be that tool which helps guide our behavior and steer it in that direction. So I think with all these ingredients coming together, we've got the machinery to dismantle the prison. So, and I think I thank you, Adam, for raising the question, if I were in charge, what would I do? Because I didn't even watch the Democratic debates because I just didn't want to be angry and throw something at the television screen about the extent to which they're downplaying this global planetary crisis. Doesn't begin to scratch the surface of how big and how devastating to life this is. Oh, please. Yeah, jump in, sweetheart.
Silas, I have a question for you. What are some of the tools you would give people?
So the most important tool I think we need to build is a complete operating system, the equivalent of Android. So you have to give them a new Android. I call it Vegan-Android, which has, for instance, the location of the nearest, the place where you need to go and clean up the water, which animals are in trouble that you need to go and help. So where are all the service activities that need to be done so that you can actually get the Aquarius currency into your wallet from the heart? So it's a way to change. So basically we are changing from acquiring for ourselves to actually serving others. So it's a different operating system altogether that you need to create. And so I would download that on their phones, and so then they can go and be free to do what they want to do.
Beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. That's really beautiful. I do want to mention that British Columbia now has infrared monitors on their ferry system so they cannot hit whales, because in Bremerton, one of the ferries actually hit a gray whale as it was surfacing and killed it, sadly. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Beautiful. Go Canada. And appropriately, next in the queue is Miles, followed by Dan, followed by Adam. Take it away, Miles.
Yes. Okay. Hello again from Canada. And when I brought up Prince Charles's book here, Harmony, A New Way of Looking at Our World, the reason it's really important to me is because our system of government will make him eventually our head of state. So he's not just a romantic figure to me. Neither is the Queen. Queen Elizabeth is also the Queen of Canada. So I'm actually drawing on a power center when I bring him into the mix, or bring the Queen into this conversation. And one of the things Jamin and Melissa and the rest of you really appreciate, I'm sure, is, you know, that the indigenous wisdom, and here's from his book. You might not be able to see this quote very clearly, but there it is, and I'll read it. He says, "If we continue to engineer the extinction of the last remaining indigenous traditional societies, we eliminate one of the last remaining sources of that wisdom." And that wisdom that he's talking about is this concept that the peoples of North America primarily lived by, which was an economy of sharing. They didn't have a concept of owning Mother Earth, you know, because Mother Earth is mother. You don't own your mother, you know, you don't enslave your mother. And he talks about the increasing, Prince Charles talks in the book about the increasing tendency in mainstream Western thinking to ignore this spiritual and even our own intuitive feelings about things. And, you know, it was really a moment of tears for many of us on the webinar when Dr. Rao talked about his reluctantly exposing his granddaughter to the death, the purposeful slaughter of a duck, and how the intuitive, natural instinct of his granddaughter was one of profound sadness. So, you know, that's what we've got to get back to, that Dr. Rao's talking about as well. And so, you know, I started this journey because on June 9th, 2015, I picked up my daughter at school. She was in grade 8 at the time. So she was 12 or 13 years old. And she said, "Daddy, you know, we watched a program where they said in 40 years, the oceans will be dead." And I said, "Well, that's unacceptable. You know, we have to change what we're doing." So ever since then, I've been reading and absorbing and working with you to try to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to do in this home stretch? So I'd like to find out more about the Aquarius currency and actually got to get my boots on the ground here locally and do something, you know, and maybe it's hemp. You know, I'd like to know more about the Emperor Saito, because today I was flossing my teeth and I'm thinking, why isn't my floss made out of hemp? This is a terrible plastic product that's getting discarded all the time. So anyway, I look forward to more about the Aquarius currency and Adam's concepts too today. Hopefully he'll present some more on that. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Miles. Really, really good stuff. I love it. This is what a great social club today. So next up is Dan, followed by Adam. And I'll put myself in the queue, followed by Jamin. So take it away, Dan.
Okay, so let me go back again to try to weave some things together. So I mentioned earlier that Beto O'Rourke had made the statement, which was ridiculed, of course, by you know, the more conservative Fox News, you know, type orientation, that these immigrants who are coming up from Central America, one of the key variables on top of the fact that you know, the Obama-Clinton sponsored coup in Honduras, for example, which is one of the countries, and what they've done in the other countries has made life very, very oppressive for anybody who lives there. But if you can't survive by growing your own food, And the only alternative is to go into some, sweatshop, almost slave labor factory for the elite, or to come north. You might really want to go north. And not having that be there as part of the dialogue is it's very problematic, because here's the thing. It's known on certain levels that that's what happened in Syria. The self-sustaining farming in southern Syria became real problematic. You had drought. And so the people had to move up into the urban centers in Syria. They don't have enough employment opportunities. These are the kind of circumstances that, lead to war and other kinds of events. So climate change and the mass migrations which are coming, it's a huge thing. And as I mentioned, from what I've been given to understand, over in India, they've got a militarized border. I was mentioning how, the United States military here since the mid-90s has been basically, working very hard to make sure that we have the capacity to keep anybody who's coming up south of the border or from the Caribbean out of the country. And so it creates a dilemma for people. So right now we see very little discussion of what we, the United States, or at least the government and the elites who, control foreign policy and the economy, have perpetrated down in Central America for a long, long time. And now we have the, factor of abrupt climate change moving things to a crisis where we're going to have these migrations. So the question becomes, where, and I get it, the idea, the Democratic candidates at the debate, it was all about immigration and how horrible and cruel and everything Donald Trump and, ICE and all of these people are, because, people are being put into uncomfortable kinds of custodial settings. But at the same time, are you going to still have that humanity? What's going to happen when you get the thing I brought up? What happens when you have to ask the question, do I want myself and my wonderful family and all my loved ones and network to be able to be here in the United States, where probably till the end, you'll have more in the way of food supplies and water coming out of the taps, etc., than most other places. So am I prepared to just open it up to all migrants, to just, and of course it's hard to envision that ever working out. We don't have the infrastructure here in the United States to possibly have anything happen like that. And so without there being a discussion, again, we just get what's happened to here in the United States and elsewhere. It's like everything seems to be in the present moment. It's like, this is what's happening today, and this is what's happening tomorrow. And there's no ability to take the history and to actually talk about what you're going to have in the future in a meaningful way. And I think that's, something which people need to address. And I think at a certain point, you have to start asking the question. Okay, yeah, you have to start asking the questions. What are we going to do? Ethically, morally, what is it we're going to do? And there's a lot of things that go into it. I mean, last thing, and I'll get off. For example, the issue of birth control and these organized religions and some economic systems which encourage high birth rates. I mean, if you don't have population control on some kind of practical level, it's just, what's going to happen then? So anyway, just throwing those thoughts out there. I'm done. Thank you.
Great stuff, Dan. Really great discussion today. All righty. Next up in the queue is Adam, followed by Jamin, followed by Melissa. Take it away, Adam.
If you guys need to go first, feel free. But you would say so.
No, you're okay. Thanks, Adam.
Okay.
I think we're loving this discussion too much to leave it at this point.
Okay. Well, so the issue was brought up of why are leaders downplaying everything? Why are we, not standing up and doing, why are they not, calling for a worldwide and a global emergency and responding like they were supposed to? And so I've been thinking about this, and things have changed so much in our lives. I mean, and every generation, the generations change. Every like 25 years is about what's considered a generation. And things have changed so much since the Industrial Revolution, since we started taking carbon out of the ground and burning it and putting it in the atmosphere. The change has been super dramatic. I mean, in 1900, there was 1.6 billion people on Earth. In 1950, there was 2.6 billion. And in 1972, it's the 3.8, and it's doubled since 1972. So huge changes. And, how are you going to be able to talk to everybody? I mean, we were able to come together in the 40s for World War II. And you think about it, and that's when Hitler was able to talk. But you think about it, the technology back then, really, then we had radios and loudspeakers. And, it was really the first time that we could really talk to masses over the airwaves. And Hitler was very talented in that. But since the 40s, our population has more than tripled. So now it's kind of unruly. I mean, we've grown so large that we're unmovable. And I think that the leaders, I think that the elite, whoever's leading, realize that we are in serious trouble, but they don't know how to move the masses. So that's why I say the masses need to learn how to come together and move themselves. If we were able to come together and move ourselves, then the elite would join us. I think they have secrets, the military has secrets, and I think they would be willing to give those up to save the world if the world was movable. Well, we can't save the world. We can't get everybody to change, but we can start it. And once we get it going, then people will come, because right now we don't have any place to go. So there's no place to go to get together, to have the Council of Mankind, or I call it the Chi. I'm calling on my website. I'm calling the Chi is CHI. It stands for Collective Human Intelligence, and the platform I'm calling the CHIP, which is Collective Human Intelligence Platform. And there, everybody can come. And so I don't know why they're not doing this, but that's my explanation. Thanks.
Thanks, Adam. Up next is Jamin, followed by Melissa. Let me start with where you just left off. I don't know why everyone isn't doing this. I think it gets back to what Silas was saying about the need for a tool. We don't have the tool yet, the platform, the P part of CHIP. is missing, and that's what we're working on, you and I and many others. I just want to start by kind of reiterating something that we've said many times, which is that we humanity urgently need to redesign and reconfigure the entire set of human activities so that we go from being a net destructive, exploitative species to being, like this ant colony that I dream of, that's going around healing Mother Earth and the ecosystems and species. Again, pointing to Silas's comments about what the Vegandroid app can do, this new operating system. So that's the point of this new operating system. So how do we accomplish that, this redesign, reconfiguration, and what new reconfiguration of living arrangements and economy do we want to strive for? What is the end point? And I think that to answer those questions, again, I'll just reiterate this magical combination that's kind of emerging: CCC, Aquarius Currency, RCI/chip, collective intelligence, Vegandroid, the OS, to help us to accomplish both meeting humanity's needs, food and shelter and all the basic needs, but sustainably. But really our main focus should be on Mother Earth, our big home here, with holistic land management, holistic ocean and freshwater management, and holistic ecosystem management, where really what needs to be managed is humanity. All these ecosystems and life supporting systems would be, frankly, doing just fine if it weren't for humanity. Although that's debatable. Another thing I just want to mention is just, as Melissa commented at the beginning, how, so much of what we used to have meaning, what used to give us meaning in life, is just collapsing, falling away. I dreamed about my father last night, who passed away in 2016. And I'm just really present to how much the world that my dad taught me about, what to focus on, whether it's buying property, getting an education, getting a career, this, that, the other, is just relatively meaningless now in the face of this calamity that we've brought upon ourselves. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Next up is Melissa, followed by Adam. All right, take it away, sweetie.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was nicely put.
Thank you.
J-Man. So I just want to go back to Dan's conversation, and Dan, you always spark a reaction in me, which I love. So yeah, in America, we need to learn about sharing. We all eat way too much food and drink way too much. We consume too much. And there is plenty of resources for everybody on this planet right now. The amount of food we destroy every single day, or waste or throw out, there is sufficient food for the whole planet. So I think we have to shift our mentality into a sharing and caring mentality. One of, as Silas would say, nonviolent and acting compassionately. The same way that I share my food with the animals around me, I don't just consume it myself. And so I just wanted to say that. And then for whatever reason, my spirit keeps weaving this poetry and these different things into this conversation today. So I'm going to read this quote, which is, most of us know it. It's from Chief Self, who's Chief Seattle, which he spoke to his tribal assembly in 1854. How can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land? This idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing and humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. All things share the same breath. We will consider your offer to buy the land. I will make one condition. The white man must treat the beasts of this land as his brothers. What is man without the beasts? If all the beasts are gone, men will die from a great loneliness of spirit. For whatever happens to the beasts soon happens to man. All things are connected. This we know, the earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth. All things are connected, like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. Man does not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, sweetie. All right. Next up is, yeah, what amazing wisdom. I mean, from Chief Sealth. It's just right now we're really feeling it. I can remember hearing that quote back in middle school when it was read, or high school or something, and be like, well, that's nice. And, you know, now back to soccer or whatever I was into. But now that we really see the mass extinction accelerating, I can really feel it. All right, next up is Adam, followed by Dan, followed by Miles. Take it away.
Yeah, you know, nobody has a right to take our air away. Nobody has a right. I don't think that, you know, the land belongs to everybody. The earth belongs to everybody. That's why I don't like money, because it makes people own the land. It gives people wealth over others, and you know, now it says, you know, I can't walk on your land because it's your land. Excuse me, who gave it to you? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Just because you have money, you own everything. So, but what I would like to do is just screen share for a second here. Well, no, here it is. Okay. And okay, so you should be seeing my screen now.
Yep. We can.
Okay. So I did this little graphic up here. It's pretty simple and stuff, but this is the line and on this side of the line is reality. Now you can see can you see my mouse moving around? So on the
we can't really see your mouse, but try again.
Okay. Can you see the mouse over by the word reality on the right?
Yeah, we can see it. It's kind of faint, but we can see it. Maybe move it around slowly, keep it moving, and we can see it.
Okay, so on the right side of this line is reality, and on the left side is digital reality. It's a non-reality, and so I just wanted to say that the platform and the vision that I'm talking about that we make is all in digital reality. And so we live right now, we live and we work and we play, and you know, we have our religion and our interests, and then we have all these different bills and anxieties and stuff. And you know, and we have the situation with the earth and being in abrupt climate change. And then we have a situation that, you know, if collapse comes and we're not prepared, then we're in trouble. But if we are prepared, there's a lot we can do. You know, like Dr. Rao says, you know, that if we turn vegan, you know, there can be a whole lot more food available. So, but what I'm saying is that over on this side, on the digital reality, we can create this vision, and it doesn't have to affect what we're doing over here. While we're over here in the non-reality world, then how this comes together is when the time of transition comes, whether it be a collapse or whether we all agree on it or not, we'll have a vision we'll have the plan that we can follow. It'll be our guide for, we'll have, you know, we'll have our future plan. This is the plan for the future. How do we come about getting that plan to work? Well, that's on the platform. The collective human intelligence comes together, and we and that's a whole nother process. Well, I'll go ahead and show you what that process is, the way I have it figured out. So this is the platform, and this is where the AI is, and we won't go into that too much right now, but basically you access the platform from the internet, and then you're in digital reality. And on the platform, the collective human intelligence forms topic teams, and through normal computer processes, we develop a plan. And so we get together and on these topic teams, and where each topic team is assigned to a certain topic or detail. And once they get that detail figured out and agreed upon, then they put it into the plan set. And then once the plan set is all filled in, that becomes the vision. So that's kind of how it works. You fill up the plan set, the plans, then that becomes the vision and the guide that teaches us where to go. Now I didn't draw this because I wanted to point out that all the relationship of life on Earth and nature is that life always adapts to nature. If you think about it, about all life on the Earth, all life adapts to nature. The only life that doesn't adapt to nature is humans, as civilized humans. When we lived as hunter-gatherers, we lived a life that adapted to nature. But when we became civilized, we changed that relationship. So now we try to make nature adapt to us. And we're just not that smart. We do things like this final graphic I made. It's kind of a joke. But here's humans, and he says, I'm naked. Oh, then the cat chimes in and she says, I'm naked too. And then the bird chimes in and says, look at me, I'm naked. And then the dog chimes in and says, well, I'm certainly naked. And the turtle says, that's ridiculous. So anyway, that's supposed to be a cartoon. You know, I mean, the way poison or the way money works, it creates a poison in our minds, and one of the reflections that show that is humanity thinking, or civilized man realizing we're naked. No other animal on the earth realizes that. So it's a weird concept, and something that we've developed since we became civilized. We're the only animal on the earth that sees nakedness, and we're also the only animal on earth that tries to make nature adapt to us. We're also the only animal on earth that recognizes money. So those are the things that I was trying to show, and I'll just stop sharing here. Where did that go? Did I stop screen sharing?
Yeah. Screen sharing is stopped. Thanks.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, well, I'm done. Thank you, and I'll, if anybody wants to ask me any questions, I'll show it, describe more. Thanks.
Awesome, Adam. I really, really like your cartoon drawn pictures. I mean, that's just such an enhancement to previous descriptions that you've done just talking, because we can really see what you're thinking. So I commend you for that and encourage you to do more of that. And probably be great stuff for your website as well. Narrated, slideshows like that. All right. Next up is Dan, followed by Miles. Take it away, Dan.
Okay, so a couple of thoughts on things that were just being discussed. Melissa, going back to you and your thought that, it would be a wonderful thing if we could have adequate food to feed everybody, and we may theoretically have, I don't know. But here's what I think is going to happen, because exponential climate change, all of the feedback loops, what we see going on, in Honduras, Central America, in Syria, soon in Bangladesh, India, we're not going to have the same supply of food. And that is something which is coming, and it's something worthwhile to talk about. What do we do if that should come? And what does it, what does it imply? With Adam, talking about, human beings, we do definitely modify the environment. That's, in a sense, how we adapt to it. We probably wouldn't have done very well if we weren't able to actually, in some ways, modify the environments. And it is out of control. Clearly, we're now living with the result of it going on for such a long period of time. I mean, I was looking at, I don't know, somebody posted something where they were showing some elderly people. I think the year was an old newsreel, 1929. And so they had these people who were, I think, in their 80s and their 90s in 1929, talking about how much change they've seen. One person, they actually had, I think, one or two people who actually fought in the Civil War still alive in 1929. And talking about in New York City, could never have imagined the size of the buildings, etc. And things have transpired in a very, very rapid kind of a way. And I think this, I'll just again tie with the way we are right now. I do think that a lot of the population has unfortunately been brainwashed in a very problematic way, where, again, in the United States, we have the people who support Donald Trump, and then we have the people who hate Donald Trump. And I'm just using that as a symbol of what's happened. But it's such a big problem that most of the population talks about Donald Trump. He's done this, or we've got to get him out of here. He's a traitor. This kind of endless focus on Donald Trump, who has become this kind of fetish object. And I do think that, when I talk to people, I've always been, on the progressive side of things from when I was a young man. And when I talk to people who I've always been close to, and we've done work together over the years and stuff. But right now, it's kind of like when I try to talk to them about certain things, they just simply, it's just like, I think you really support Donald Trump. This kind of stuff is thrown at me. And of course, I view Donald Trump as a natural born psychopath. but at the same time, he figured out how to win an election by talking about the outsourcing of the Rust Belt, primarily in other places in the country. He figured that out. And what I find is that's almost being suppressed now as a reality. And if you can't talk about the history. But anyway, what I find out is, I just find that, I'll say to somebody, you've been brainwashed, like a cult. And you know how hard it is to deprogram from that. And once in a while, somebody will kind of go, well, is that possible? Is that possible? But it is possible. And I know from my research over lots of years that the Central Intelligence Agency and other intelligence agency organizations have operated on the premise that we have this enormous population, and how are we going to control them? How can we control everybody? And they have to do it through. Okay, yeah. So I guess where I would final little plug for Tulsi Gabbard, which may seem kind of incongruous with all the rest of this, but one of the things that now she's somebody who is 38 or 39 years old, and so really of a younger generation, and her whole thing, in a sense, is we need to be concerned with service. And she uses the fact that when she when 9/11 occurred, she enlisted in the Army because she felt at that point in her life that was what you needed to do, and of course, she did serve 2 tours of duty in the Middle East. And she then came to the realization that this was really, a very, very unfortunate thing. And she's able to kind of enunciate that in a very, very helpful way. And I think that as we go into, who's going to be the leader? If it's Donald Trump, things won't go very well. And if it's a lot of these other individuals, I don't think things will go well either. And I would just say that, if we have to really start talking about the ultimate sacrifices, and how we're going to be as human beings, and at some point, who gets to live and who should be dying. I mean, that's something which we're going to have, at a certain point. And okay, thank you. I'm done.
Thanks, Dan. By the way, that's always just a guideline. It's never a cane pulling you off the stage. Melissa's has a comment, and then followed by Miles. I think that's what who we got in the queue at the moment. So take it away, Sweetie. Mm-hmm.
So just going back to the comment about food and sharing, I think we're really educated to think, and we're in this system to just take care of ourselves, and that everything needs to serve humans. The food chain, the earth, we just take for ourselves. And I think it's really tragic, and it could be our demise, that unless we shift out of that mentality into sharing and compassionate mindset, we will, I believe, will lead to our own demise. And so for me personally, if I have a sandwich and it's the last sandwich on the earth, and someone next to me is starving, whether it's a human or a non-human being, I will share my last sandwich on the earth with that being. So how do we all get to that state where, because we're all connected, we're all one family, The food belongs to all of us, whether we're human or not human. So how do we get to that place where we stop thinking all the time from this selfish place? I don't personally want to be on this planet without all the other animals and creatures, just like which Chief Seattle talks about. Can we live with the silence? Can you look out upon the ocean and know that there's no more life in the ocean, but you're going to keep feeding yourselves? So I think we've got to really change our mindset here. We have to stop thinking about our own personal survival. And I think it will get easier and more meaningful if we stop thinking about our own survival and start thinking about the survival of the whole planet. How can we serve that? And get out of these political conversations, whether Trump is in power or somebody else. We have to be that change. We have to affect the change now from where we stand, each individual, and connected to the whole web. Whether it's picking up litter, like I've said this before, I can't go down the street or on the beach, and we did it again this morning. I cannot step over garbage. It puts me into pain. So I pick it up. And how do we all get to that place of responsibility and accountability where we're making these new choices? Where we see an animal being hurt or starving and we stop and we take care of that. Or we slow our cars down when we see a raccoon at night or a possum instead of hitting it. I've never hit an animal. And I live surrounded by wildlife, and yet I see roadkill all the time. Why is that? Why can't we break? Why can't we slow down? Why can't we change our ways? Thank you.
Beautiful, sweetie. Thank you. All right, up next is Miles, and I think you and I probably need to get wrapping soon. Take it away, Miles.
Thank you. So I'll just try to connect what Melissa said with Chief Seattle and Adam and Dan. And what occurs to me is that everybody here, everybody who has ever shown up on the social club, we are people who are willing to stick our heads up above the parapet. And we're willing to publicly say, folks, this isn't working for us. It's not working. But so many other people are in their routines. But everybody here, we have to somehow at the same time go forth and get a job. We have to enter into commerce. So if it wasn't intuitive to me that something's really wrong, I would a long time ago have perhaps just gone down to the Honda dealership and tried to get a job to sell people Hondas, because I think they make a great product and it's really impressive. But I know that, if I just go in the current paradigm, my goal is to sell you a Honda and maximize what I'm going to take home at your expense. But is there a way for us to say, well, I'm going to go at least even apply for a job at Honda and try to present a different paradigm? Even if we just go out trying to do that is going to shake things up a bit, saying, okay, Honda, I want to sell your cars, or Boeing, I want to sell your 737 MAX, but I'm going to do it honestly and ethically. You're probably not going to get very far. But at some point, maybe we will, each of us, say, okay, I would like to borrow, or I'd like to incorporate with attribution Adam's concepts that he just presented. I'd like to incorporate the Radish concepts and Dan's concepts and go out into the marketplace and share to change the paradigm or get people thinking about it, really putting it in their face. And, to quote Prince Charles, just to wrap up, as I said, and this relates to Chief Seattle, the increasing tendency in mainstream Western thinking is to ignore the spiritual, our intuitive feelings about things. And he goes on to say, empiricism, as wonderful as empiricism is, it cannot articulate matters of the soul. valuable as empiricism is, it excludes the voices, those other levels of language in giving a comprehensive view of reality. It elbows out the soul out of the picture. Science can tell us how things work, but not what they mean. So we need to get away from this empiricism and the industrial growth society, and let's try to actually create commerce, which is incorporating everything we've seen today, sharing it with attribution, and affecting the market in a positive way. Anyway, thank you.
Beautiful, Miles. Thanks. Melissa has a
Yeah.
quick comment. I have a quick comment, and then Dan is up next. Go ahead, sweetie.
I don't recall if it's from Joanna Macy's book or another one I was reading yesterday. This author says, we can still act to ensure a livable world, and we can meet our needs without destroying our life support system. To choose life means to build a life-sustaining society. So it is possible. We just have to do it differently and make different choices. And I think radical simplicity is one of those choices we have to make. We have to do with less stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to give up a lot in order to save the planet. I don't really have a problem with that. It's essential. I don't really see what would have meaning beyond, saving life on Earth at this point. So, yeah. All right. Love you all. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, sweetie. All right, quick comment for me, and then Dan is next, and I think maybe we ought to move towards wrapping up, or we can.
I just want to say Adam is next, actually, and then I'm up. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. Oh, sorry about that, you guys. Adam, Dan. Okay, thank you. Indeed, Adam, and then Dan. So I just wanted to, kind of reiterate. I think we have, the beginnings of the essential ingredients to make this transformation. Radical collective intelligence, or CHIP, CCC, Aquarius currency, Vegan-Android. We're getting there. It's kind of like if this were a telescope, it's starting to come into view. And the thing is, we have to figure out a way for all of us to make the transition. It's not enough for 0.01% of us to live off the grid and saying, hey, I'm doing my part, screw you. We have to figure out a way for all of us to get there. So Adam is up next, followed by Dan. Take it away, Adam.
Oh, thanks. So I'd like to screen share again here real quick. Okay. So there it should be. Okay, so Dan brought up he brought up the hunter-gatherers, actually, and so here's a hunter-gatherer, and this picture was taken 12,000 years ago. No, but this is a picture, and one thing I saw that I didn't realize is how large of the animals we used to live with. And then if you read Graham Hancock's new book out that he came out with, which I can't remember the name of, and Brian Forster, I got this actually off a video that Brian Forster put out, and these are our ancestors lived with huge animals. This is some kind of a wolf. This is a plant eater. And anyway, we don't think about that stuff. And then, so I wanted to share this. So anthropology or archaeology, our computer processors have improved so much, and we've got, technology has improved so much. We now have, ground radar that we can fly over in airplanes, and we can do 3D imaging of stuff under the ground. So they're finding more and more ancient findings all the time. And recent findings say that our Homo sapiens species began about 315,000 years ago, and that our population was 10 million or less basically for all this time. And this is a logarithmic scale, so it was proportional and go way up above the page. But this is what's happened in a very short amount of time. And if you look at the other graphs, they show that about 7,000 years ago, about 5,000 BC, is when our population started to rise, and that's when we entered civilization. And what's interesting about that is that it correlates with what the Bible says, actually. And I'm not thumping the Bible or anything, but I just want to point out that that the Garden of Eden is when it tells a story in there, when humanity lived in the Garden of Eden, which I interpret it as to be all this time when we were hunter-gatherers, we lived straight from nature, as in the hands of from the hand of God or whatever, and we were naked and we didn't even know it, and this was before we supposedly committed our first sin. And what's interesting about the Bible is it's only the first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, that even talks about our life in the Garden of Eden, but doesn't say how long we lived there. And the point that's interesting is that the entire rest of the Bible is of humanity after we've left the Garden of Eden, or after we've already committed the first sin. And I think that the allegory is really real, because when we first committed the first sin, it was when we left our lives as hunter-gatherers, when we started planting and herding. All of a sudden we started having population overshoot. So then, another generation goes by, and all of a sudden, we realize that, and if you talk to modern tribes today, hunter-gatherer tribes, they say that they won't go back to hunting. They wouldn't want to become civilized, because our lives are hard compared to theirs. And they've heard stories passed down to them from the past that of other tribes that have entered civilization, started planting and herding, and then they get stuck. They want to come back to the life of hunter-gatherers because it's easier, but they're stuck because they have to feed their people. So now they have to plant and herd, and their populations keep growing, and the first form of money is animals, and herding animals. The whole mindset changes. There's a big change between that happens here when we change the relationship of that life adapts to nature adapting to life. It changes our whole mindset, the way we think about life. It makes us harden our hearts to nature. And so we can go to this grocery store and we pick meat off the shelf, and we never think about the animal. All we look at is the price tag and the expiration date.
I'd just like to jump in and just, the slide that you had, Adam, where you showed the platform, the collective human intelligence, the chi,
Yeah.
and then reality. We really have to, if we're going to save the planet, we're really going to have to connect with everybody who's, at Facebook, at Honda, Boeing, and get them all doing what you're saying, seeing, having that vision, because it's only if we transform these massive corporations that we're going to have the energy and the leverage necessary to change things quickly. But if we can reach enough people to say, like, we've seen the light, we're sticking our heads up over the parapet, you have to do the same at your corporation and change and be sustainable, seriously sustainable, then we have a hope. But because these corporations have all the current assets and energy and intelligence tied up. And
Right.
Anyway, thank you.
Hey guys, really good point, Miles. So Adam, you go ahead and I'll let you finish. Melissa and I do have to bow out at this point, but please keep it rolling. We're not going to shut it down or anything like that. We'll just let you guys self-serve. Love to hear Fred's comments. I'll have to watch it on the recording. Fred, if you choose to jump in. But anyway, Adam, go ahead and wrap it up and then pass the baton to Dan, please. And then y'all can self-serve without the moderation services of Jamin. Great to see everybody, both on the program now and who've dropped off. And thanks everyone for participating and making the Social Club the amazing platform that it is. This is collective intelligence, by the way. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next time. Remember, and for those who didn't hear, it'll be Thursday next week instead of Tuesday, but I'll send out an email to everyone to let you know. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Godspeed, peace, love, unity, and onward. Okay. See you guys soon.
Okay, yeah. So you said, we need to get Boeing and all these different people on. Well, so humanity is very large, and the fact is we're not going to be able to get everybody. But those of us who are in the know are enough to get this going. So if we start this collective human intelligence platform, and start building this plan set, start filling in all the details. And then all of a sudden people will start to see that we have something going. And they'll come, by building it, they'll come. If we don't have a place to go, then they won't come. But this is a place, and it doesn't take that many people to really get it going. It takes some money to get it going, and that's what I'm trying to do is set up my new A World Without Money website, because I'm setting it up under a nonprofit corporation, and but I'm applying for the 501c3 status, but it doesn't matter anyway. If we can just get this going. I mean, it wouldn't take that many of us. We can if everybody just started donating money to get this happening, and I think if to make something like this happen, I think the elite, the very wealthy, would put a lot of money into this. I think they would make it happen really fast if they knew about it. And about the AI over here, well, one thing about AI is humanity needs Superman or the Avengers or somebody like that to come down and save us. That's the situation of our environment, and everything is like that. So bad that we just don't know what to do. Well, we don't have Superman or the Avengers. That's not real. So the only thing that we have that's even close is our AI technology, because AI can be when the theory of AI is that if it when it's fully developed, it'll be able to become millions of times more intelligent than all of the human race in a matter of days, and that's the kind of time frame we need. So if I was in charge, I would say we have 10 AI labs working on the development of AI today. I would take the 10 and I would turn them into 100, and I would bring that AI online as fast as I could, but I would keep it extremely safe. I would. It's something that we could use, and it may be able to answer questions to the predicaments that we're in that we don't know how to give answers to. We've already passed the point of no return on some of this stuff. So The AI may be able to help us. And other than that, I think that mostly normal human computer processes could be used to make the vision. So I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
I have a question. Hang it.
Yeah. I heard you, Fred, and then you clicked off.
What is Dr. Rao's website address?
It's climatehealers.org, I believe.
Climatehealers.org.
Yeah.
Oh, great, thank you.
What do you think about this, Fred?
I've chosen to listen this week rather than speak because
last week you said you couldn't understand it, and so I was trying to lay it out so it could be better understood. Does it make any sense to you?
I have to say not really right now, and I'm fighting this impulse in myself to feel completely overwhelmed by all of the variables that we're dealing with. It's just, and asking people to make changes in their lifestyle and their whole like ontological orientation in a quick minute is just, I somehow want to work my way out of it, but I have, I just have so many questions. Asking people, asking people to act like intelligent people who are not subject to their immediate needs is just, it's hard for me to.
Let me explain something, Fred.
Sure.
That I don't think you're quite seeing it. This is all. This platform is over. It's over here. It's in digital reality.
Yeah.
So life is like this on this side. What we do over here doesn't affect this side. So we're not asking people to change. We're saying we're giving a place we're giving people a tool to develop a vision for how to change.
Yeah, no, Adam, I understand that. I understand that.
Listen, guys, I got to just jump in. I'm going to have to go. I just want to just say one thing, and then I'll check out. The issue of leadership, because the way we are right now is, if Donald Trump were to suddenly say, we've got an exponential climate change crisis, we've got to do something about it, that would immediately, the president, the big authority figure, that would immediately change things. And I really do think that, although she probably has no realistic chance, given how she is detested by the establishment, but I do think someone like Tulsi Gabbard would be able to make that kind of a step. She has the courage to do it. And then final thing, I remember here in when I was working for the Department of Public Health, and we had the Ebola scare, and we were, this bioterror unit, and so one of the things that I remember bringing up was that when the Fukushima disaster took place in Japan, the people who went down there to explore what could be done, apparently not enough could be done, but These were people who had the technical skills, the engineering technical skills to be able to do it, but they were over 60 years of age, if I recall. Maybe it was 55. The point is, these were people who had lived a good piece of time. And so they were willing to make the sacrifice, that they may not come out very well from going down there. And so I said to at CDPH, I just said, why don't those of us who are older, why aren't we're going to be the ones who should be stationed at the triage locations, etc. It just makes so, and again, it was just completely foreign. Actually, it was such a authoritarian bureaucratic structure that nothing. But again, I do think right now in the United States we're all absorbed, where we can't get away from the political process. I think it's really important for everybody to look at who could step up there, and just simply, because if the president of the United States says we're in an existential crisis, this is for real, and now we're going to have to do whatever we have to do, that would instantly alter the consciousness. And I'm hopeful that as this whole process plays out and we keep having the weather disasters that are occurring right now in the Northern Hemisphere, we'll get somewhere. Anyway, so I look forward to seeing you all next week, Thursday. Take care, everybody.
Guys, I have to go as well. This went longer than any of our previous sessions, it seems like. And Adam, I really appreciate your effort and your belief. I don't want you to think for a minute that I just sort of, yeah.
Fred, if I could just, before you go,
yes, sir.
Just offer maybe something that'll help you, and something I want to express to Adam that I really appreciate about his drawing there. The one where he has the vision circle and vision written in the middle, and it's the chi side of it, and then on the other side he's got the reality side of it. That circle with vision in the middle of it is very indigenous. That's indigenous people's thinking, and we intuitively know that ourselves, because we've talked about how we come together here in this circle. If there was a campfire and we could all be on chairs around it, that would even be better. But essentially we come together in this circle, and we're having this vision, and that's the real soulish part of it. That's where the soul comes from. And then what Adam's doing is then he's now saying, okay, now let's make it, empiricism is a reality, and we do have to get empirical, create a platform, and coming together with sharing ideas and then building something. Thank you.
Hey, Miles. So the Native Americans, they come together in council. Corporations come together in council. The government comes together in council. Humanity doesn't have a place to come together in council. We have the technology now to do that. All we have to do is have an internet platform, and we can do something that we've never been able to do forever, and that is we can talk and speak to each other face to face without a voice or a translation. We have automatic translation software, so we can use that. We won't have a barrier, a language barrier. That's what I'm trying to say. And so we can do that now.
Yeah, so it's there's like a governance authority that's being created by the chi, and that's where everybody is recognized as intrinsically worthy to be participating, as long as you're coming forward in a spirit of peace and friendship, then that's where we change. Instead of saying, okay, we're just a bunch of sheep to be told what to do and be led off the cliff, we take over.
Right. So we're told all these things, and we have to believe them right off the and we have to believe everything that the oil companies are telling us, that energy isn't available out there, other energy, and the government's telling us, and they've got all kinds of secrets, and the corporations own them, so we don't know what's going on. So this platform would have to be something really unbiased. So it would have to be without money. It would be operated solely by membership fees, or dues, and there wouldn't be any advertising. It would be run solely on those, and that way we would have a place to come together. And I do have the details kind of figured out to a great extent. I mean, we could, it's like humanity. There's 7.7 billion people in the world. Well, if everybody that joins the platform fills out these long questionnaires, then what happens is those questions are used to answer, so that you can't vote on everything. So there's a model in the AI that they're in the platform, and everything's tested against this model. And if everything, I know I'm jumping around and probably not getting it, describing it very well, but basically the questions will provide a profile for all of humanity that the model can use, and that's how we test everything.
Well, it makes sense, when you think about how sophisticated the flight simulators are. That's where they're Boeing right now is saying, oh yeah, we shouldn't have gone to India to hire $9 an hour engineers and cheap out, because now we're paying for it. But they actually use simulators, modeling. They're not actually, a lot of the things they're discovering is by using simulators. So, and you look at any of these simulators on YouTube where they recreate things like flights that crashed, they're very realistic. So I see what you're saying. We create a model, a simulator, test things just like they do at Boeing. And I'm going to have to wrap up too. So I got an appointment, but this has been great.
It has super. Really. Fred?
Yes, sir.
You want to say anything before you go and we sign off?
Just have a great week, and I'm trying to cultivate listening and not reacting, and thinking about what I have to say before I say it, because and I find this as still. I understand it a little better, and I'm a little bit more hopeful. But I have to think about my responses to this. I am, believe me, I think about it every day.
So we grow up learning the way we think about money. We learn this. I mean, and we were born into this life. So we had never seen another way of living. So all that time that we lived as hunter-gatherers, for over 300,000 years, we didn't use money. And we had the relationship. Currency.
You call it money, I call it currency.
We didn't use currency.
What?
We didn't use currency back then. We didn't use any form of money. They didn't when they got together and traded. If they had extra stuff left over, that they would trade, but they traded out of the heart. If one tribe met another during the summer, and that that winter that one tribe did not have as much food given or whatever. They didn't write contracts or sign an IOU or a check. You know, they gave from the heart. It wasn't.
I think that maybe that's possible in a smaller world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with 7 billion and counting, to expect everybody to operate that way is, problematic. I have to go, Adam. I love you, brother. You've got heart. Yeah. So
Thank you.
we'll reconvene next week. Okay, man. Take care. Thank you.
I'm going to check the YouTube channel here and see what they're saying
Okay.
before we hang up. So I'll see you.
All right, man.
Who inspired me? Environmental Coffee House asked who inspired me. That's a question I'm going to have to think about answering. Basically, a hitchhiker inspired me a long time ago, about 30 years ago. And he told me something that I never forgot. And that's where all this came from. But I just really don't want to talk about it right now. So I'll talk about it. I'll talk to you about it, Sandy, when we communicate. Let's see, any other questions? Goodbye.